新加坡领导人，他思考本国独特的发展模式。面对时代之变，他认为既要与时俱进，也要不忘本源，拥抱多边合作。他称赞“一带一路”倡议是广受欢迎的双赢模式。新加坡总理李显龙接受高端访谈独家专访，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎来到本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵。今天我们来到了素有花园国家美誉的新加坡，在我身后的一侧呢是当地著名的地标鱼尾狮雕像，另一侧是新加坡为了庆祝建国50周年而修建的金喜桥，它纪念着这个国家独特的发展之路。今天我们要在这里对话的嘉宾是新加坡总理李显龙。他曾经说过，新加坡以全球化为生，而在全球化遭遇逆风的今天，新加坡如何规划未来的发展之路？对于中新两国与时俱进的全方位合作伙伴关系，它有哪些新的思考和展望呢？今天我们一起在对话中寻找答案。Your Excellency Prime Minister, thank you so much for joining us today. China's two sessions, the political season, has been successfully concluded not long ago, and you have sent congratulatory letters to Chinese leaders. So what do you think is the significance of this year's two sessions?
Well, very importantly, you've settled the leadership team for the next 5 years, and I've written to President Xi to congratulate him on his re-election, and Premier Li Qiang to congratulate him on his election. For China, your two sessions are very important occasions for setting the agenda and debating the direction of the country. And I think the direction has been quite clearly defined in the speeches and the statements and the interviews which the leaders have given. And we look forward to China implementing this and continuing to prosper and continuing to develop good, mutually beneficial relations with the rest of the world generally, but especially with Asia. And of course with Singapore.
Of course. When you met with Chinese President Xi Jinping last year in Bangkok, President Xi described this bilateral relations between China and Singapore as forward-looking, strategic, and exemplary. And he also emphasized that high quality should be the hallmark of this bilateral cooperation. So, Mr. Prime Minister, how would you define the bilateral relations between the two countries? And also, how do you think this very distinctive feature of high quality can be pursued and brought forward?
Well, I think we have very good relations. They are broad and encompass many fields. And we have been working together for many years. I mean, you look at we established diplomatic relations was 1990, so that's 33 years ago. But in fact, we had cooperation for many years even before that. So we know each other well. I think that there's trust and mutual understanding. We have our different perspectives on issues, but we work with one another. And we have been able to get very substantive projects going. We have what we call government-to-government projects. The first one was the Suzhou Industrial Park, Suzhou Gongyueyuan. That's celebrating 30th anniversary next year. And it's been a very successful project. In fact, it has been ranked the best economic development zone in China now 7 years running. So it has amply fulfilled the hopes we had when we launched the project. Then we had the Tianjin Eco-City, Tianjin Sheng Taicheng, which I think you have visited.
Yes, as the very first story as a journalist when I started working.
Yes, I think that was some years ago, but now it's 10th anniversary, and it's fulfilling a role demonstrating and trying out ways to make a city sustainable and eco-friendly, which is important for China and important also for the world. And the third G2G project is our Chongqing Connectivity Project, the Integrated Land Sea Transport Corridor, which goes from Chongqing into Guangxi and to Beipuwan. And that fits in with the Belt and Road Initiative and helps to provide a new link between the interior of China with the outside world. You have a link down the Yangtze River, down the Changjiang, but that's some distance and also is very, very busy. So an additional link, shorter, faster, out to Southeast Asia and to the rest of the world, we think it makes significant contribution to the Belt and Road idea. So I think we have good projects. Our private sector, of course, has very extensive cooperation too. Also, we have specific things to do. For example, we have the FTA with China, which we have revised once before and is being reviewed again. We're having subsequent negotiations, which we hope we will be able to complete before too long.
走过建交33年的时光长廊，中新两国龙狮共舞，正在多个合作领域加速奔跑。与新加坡科技研究局的合作就是其中之一。
今天我们来到了新加坡科技研究局下属的一个实验室，要在这里探访一项国际首创技术的原型样机。那么这究竟是一项怎样的技术，又有哪些创新亮点呢？今天我们就带您一探究竟。
这台仪器的名称是高速3维轮廓形貌测量仪，它是一台特殊的显微镜，能够检测半导体芯片微米级的缺陷。以前，一块半导体芯片的质量检测需耗时30个小时，但在这台机器的帮助下，只需要30毫秒。
您看它这个是可以看到它的厚度的，它是有一个小小的纵深，因为很薄很薄嘛。
对对。然后这个蓝色的就是一个比较高的那个表面，绿色的就是一个比较低的表面。但我们这个 sample 大概有2个微米的高度的一个差，可以看到一些比如说上面的particle， 这是在实际的生产过程中是不允许的。Semiconductor 通常是这样，一旦有一片出来之后，接下来的可能1万片、2万片都会有类似的缺陷。所以你如果有一个可以在线的检测系统的话，可以避免这种损失。
据研究人员介绍，这一技术是半导体生产领域的创新，但新技术从实验室走向市场，还需要其他要素。
中国有广阔的市场，便于推广这样的一些技术。中国还有优势就是它有完整的产业链。
China as our launch to the world and the beginning of our technology is a big market. Everybody want to be there. If I can compete in Chinese market, I can survive anywhere.
The projects that you just mentioned, the new international land sea trade corridor,
Yes.
the Suzhou Industrial Park, the Tianjin Eco City, actually those projects are now playing we're playing a demonstration role under the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
Actually, Singapore is the very first country among ASEAN members to publicly express the support for the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yes.
So what has prompted this country to express its support at a very early age?
Well, we supported it because we saw this as a good strategic move by China. China is growing, China is prospering, China's place in the world is becoming more important. The Belt and Road Initiative, we saw it as one way China could contribute to the development of the region and therefore integrate itself into the regional network of cooperation and interdependence, and therefore be welcomed across the region in a win-win way. The region needs infrastructure, the infrastructure needs financing. China is capable of doing that. Or building infrastructure, it can also help to provide the financing. It can also develop the trade and economic links with the countries in the region. And with the Belt and Road Initiative, there's a framework within it which this can be done. Mm-hmm. With China within our region, the biggest economy, it's important that we develop that relationship in an open and sustainable and, I think, mutually beneficial way. So we saw the Belt and Road Initiative from that light, and therefore we decided that we should say, yes, it makes sense, we support it.
And the other is, what kind of opportunities do you think this initiative will usher in for not only Singapore, but also the region?
From Singapore's point of view, what do we contribute to Belt and Road? Well, first, we are a financial center, so it could be one place where projects have financing and where projects can be evaluated, and that's an important piece of the infrastructure, the soft infrastructure for the scheme. And in fact, Singapore is one of the biggest trading centers for renminbi internationally. So that's one aspect of it. Then there's also the legal aspect of it, because we are a center for arbitration, mediation. Many international law firms operate in Singapore. Countries on the Belt and Road schemes, if they're looking for places to arbitrate their issues or to find legal expertise, we can be one of the sources for these, to meet these projects' needs. So that makes sense for us also. And I think thirdly, in Singapore, many companies find us a convenient place to set up what they call control tower functions.
Control tower functions.
Control tower functions.
What do you mean by that?
That means the headquarters, the fiscal management, the human resource management, the oversight of operations all around us, maybe sometimes over on a very big footprint throughout the region. And so if some of the companies would like to set up here and therefore from here be able to manage their operations in Southeast Asia better, I think that's good for them, and we're happy to have them.
This is what you would call win-win, right?
That's win-win.
Mm-hmm. Well, turning back to bilateral cooperation, the digital economy is now becoming one of the new highlights for China-Singapore cooperation. And in November of 2021, China has formally applied to join DIPA, Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, which was proposed by Singapore, New Zealand, and Chile.
Yeah, we three of us form the DIPA right now.
So what do you think is the significance of China's decision to join this mechanism, and how does Singapore see China's accession?
I think the digital economy is a very important new growth area. For China, certainly, because you have many very successful digital companies now. And for other countries too, it is a growth opportunity, and it's therefore also an opportunity for countries to work together in the digital field, establish standards, become interoperable, be able to have data flows across borders freely and with suitable safeguards. And all those require new rules. So therefore, the idea of a digital economy agreement is a kind of new age FTA. I think it's good for China to have an interest in DIPA, because when we formed DIPA, the idea was to have it designed to be open so that anybody can join who can meet the standards and will commit to meeting the standards.
Mr. Prime Minister, let's talk a little bit about China-ASEAN relations, which now has entered fast lane. Well, remarkable progress has been made in the past years, with both sides becoming each other's largest trading partner, with trade volume increased by about 100 times from 30 years ago, and with direct investment exceeding $310 billion, astounding, remarkable progress rate. And now both sides are pushing for a kind of upgrade for cooperation, which is known as version 3.0 free trade agreement. So what role do you think Singapore could play in this process?
Well, we are one member of ASEAN. There are 10 members. We are nearly the smallest. So we have a modest conception of our role in ASEAN, but we will participate in it fully and try to help it to move forward. You ask how Singapore can help. Apart from participating in ASEAN, one of the ways we help is by showing the potential of what can be done. So we have a Singapore-China FTA. I mean, it has agreements and provisions, and there's an ASEAN-China FTA. And I think when you're negotiating with one country, it's not so complicated as negotiating with a group of 10.
Right.
And therefore, you can go faster and further. But it shows what can be done. And therefore, it's an encouragement when working with ASEAN to say, look, it is possible. Singapore has done it. We found it good. China has found it workable. Why not think about it? And so that's one way in which Singapore can help to push the ASEAN-China cooperation forward. I think the ASEAN-China cooperation also depends on the overall, economic cooperation also depends on the overall relationship. Because between China and ASEAN, it's not just economic issues, but you also have discussion on political issues and security issues, and there are some problems which need to be worked upon. I mean, for example, we are discussing the code of conduct on the South China Sea. That's something which is not easy to work out, but we've been working on it, and we hope to make further progress. Between ASEAN and China, the relations are good, but the more we can deal with the non-economic issues well, I think the more the economic relations can prosper. And it works the other way around too. If we can have good economic ties, I think there's more incentive for us to resolve the other problems.
Mr. Prime Minister, let's shift gears a little bit and come back to Singapore.
Yes.
Well, people outside of Singapore always talk about its unique model of development, and I know you would rather call it a kind of approach. So, as the Prime Minister of Singapore, how do you think this country, which is a small island state with very limited resources, to not only survive, but also thrive?
Well, first, we must know that we are a small country surrounded by much bigger countries, and will always be. Therefore, if we are conscious of that, we have to make up for that. Make up for that by working more cohesively, by being more creative, by making the most of our people, by running an efficient system, clean, trusted, respected, and doing sensible things so that we can create value, not just for ourselves to make a living, but for other people to say, yes, Singapore has something to add. Let's work with Singapore and take advantage of this. And of course, we have to make friends with many countries, because if you can have friends who make common cause with you on issues which are important to you and to them, well, that helps us not just economically, but in terms of our network and our position in the world. And within the country, we have to be able to work together and care for one another and understand that we are Singaporeans together. So whatever arguments we may have or differences, please remember that what we share in common is much more important.
Mm-hmm. So to me, it sounds like kind of unity, the unity within the country and also the very close ties or good relations with other parts of the world.
Yes, with our neighbors and with major countries and even small countries elsewhere. If you look at where our big markets are, you're talking about China, Europe, America. But if you ask who are our friends, well, these are our friends. Many small countries are our friends too.
Singapore has supported and participated in the Global Development Initiative, which is proposed by China. So in which way do you think GDI could help in addressing the ongoing global challenges?
We are a member of the Friends of GDI group. We think that the objectives of the GDI, which are consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, are good ones. We think that they can be implemented in a way which is pragmatic, which is inclusive, which is open. And so we are in support of this. Just as we are in support of other initiatives and other groupings.
Talking about China-Singapore relations, there's one person we have to mention is Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, who's the founding Prime Minister of Singapore and also an old friend of Chinese people.
Yes.
In an exclusive interview with CCTV back in 2005, he said that China's growth and its rise will bring strong impetus to Southeast Asia.
Yes.
And he also said, quote unquote here, Singapore will perform the role of base to understand Southeast Asia. So now about 20 years later, as his son and also the Prime Minister of Singapore, how do you understand his words?
Well, there's no doubt that China's rise has been an enormous benefit to Southeast Asia. Nearly every country in Southeast Asia has China as its biggest trading partner. Singapore does too. And that's a tremendous economic opportunity. Singapore has, I think, pays disproportionate attention to this. And in the early years, I think we were perhaps moving faster than the others in developing the economic relationship. But as the other countries have established their links, so what is our role? Well, I think for your companies, there's a value in working with Singapore and through Singapore, managing their presence in Southeast Asia, as I explained just now, with the control tower functions and the headquarters activities. The financial activities through Singapore are significant. And also, I think Singapore, we articulate more explicitly what it is which is at stake in developing the relationship with China and maintaining peace, stability, and prosperity in this part of the world. And we hope that by speaking up that way, we can exercise some modest influence to encourage countries to think about the opportunities and the risks in the international scene and work together to take advantage of one and avoid the other.
What vision do you have for the future of your country?
We have built a country which has increasingly had a sense of nationhood and identity. It's prospered now for more than one generation. And what we would like to see is that it can continue to evolve and develop into the future, keeping up with the times, but at the same time maintaining the values and the instincts and the culture which have made us unique and made us successful. So that's quite hard. You have to keep up with what's happening, but at the same time, you must not forget what made this place tick. We are still small, we are still vulnerable, we still have to work hard, we still need to make friends, and we still need to stay together as one Singapore. And if we can do that, then Singapore will be successful.
李显龙的父亲李光耀是新加坡的建国总理。1965年建国以来，新加坡在李光耀的带领下取得举世瞩目的发展成就。李光耀曾推动新加坡深度参与中国改革开放伟大进程。2015年，李光耀逝世时，习近平主席亲至宴奠，称其为中国人民的老朋友，中新关系的奠基人、开拓者、推动者。
They are determined as a people to unify and build a modern, powerful, wealthy Chinese nation. And I say good luck to them.
在李显龙的回忆里，李光耀对中国观察入微，也对中国的发展有着强烈的兴趣。很早就预见了中国改革开放的成功，以及中国对世界的深远影响。青年时期的李显龙在英国剑桥大学攻读数学，获得数学学位后，李显龙在父亲的建议下继续深造计算机科学。如今在工作之余，李显龙偶尔仍会在社交媒体上分享自己编写的代码或数学家的新突破。
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, let's talk a little bit about yourself.
Yes.
I heard that you have great passion for mathematics. And for instance, when people like me, when we take on vacation, we relax and we have fun, right? But I heard when you take on vacation, you would spend some of your vacation time to look into unsolved mathematical problems. And that is depicted by some local media as revealing the geeky side of you every now and then. Back in your days in Cambridge, some professors say they felt it was a pity for you to become a politician, not a mathematician, because you were back then a rising star in the world of math. Mr. Prime Minister, have you ever regret about this choice? And how do you think your mastery of mathematics has influenced you in your approach of governance?
I don't regret. I was not a rising star. I was a promising student.
You're very being modest here.
It's a vast field, and I did 2 undergraduate years in mathematics, so it's just barely at the foothills. I enjoyed it. I was not bad at it, but there are many more talented and brilliant mathematicians in the world than me, and I decided that I had a responsibility to come back to Singapore and be part of Singapore and do what I could to help the country to succeed. It's a small country. It was at that time a very new country, the first few years of independence. And every person who could make a difference should make a difference. And I thought I would like to do that and do my best. And I think that's the right thing to do. It's been a very fulfilling life. I've been first in the armed forces.
Right.
And then after that in government, and I've been in government now nearly 40 years.
Yes.
It's tremendously intellectually stimulating because you deal with such a wide range of issues. Some of them quantitative. You have to make your budgets balance.
Which is you're good at, all those numbers, right?
Well,
the more numbers, the more exciting you get.
But then you see, it's never just numbers.
Gotcha.
The numbers have to work, but you must be able to make it work in terms which people can understand and accept and want to see. What difference does it make to somebody's life? Why does it matter to them? Why does it matter to us? Which ones should we go first? Is it more important to build more houses first? Is it more important to have less social impact from migrant workers in the country? Is it more important to grow faster? Or maybe to pay more attention to social welfare issues and accept lower growth in order to have less pressure on the people? So these are often intangible, difficult to settle issues, difficult to settle permanently.
Right.
There are no permanent solutions. You cannot say, done, proven, QED, put aside, next problem. These are
Never
issues,
a check in there, not a full check in there.
you cannot say checked, done. These are issues which will come back over and over again, year after year, in different forms. You solve it, some other issue will take its place, or this will come back in a different way. And China has the same situation. I mean, you solve the problem of poverty,
right.
Then you have the question of inequality, you address that, but there's never any point where you can say, my job is done.
Well, you're not only very passionate about mathematics, and also I think you not only believe in persistence and also by keeping an open mind. You also think hope sometimes is very well needed, because in your National Day rally in 2021, you quoted a song, 春天里.
Yes.
And you even sang a little bit.
Yes. No, I can't sing.
I know, but you sound a little bit like 春天里百花香 lang lig lang lig lang lig lang. But what you really care is about the scripts at the very end, right?
Yes.
It's 不用伤，前途自有风和浪，莫彷徨，黑暗尽处有曙光.
Yes.
Why did you decide to quote that specific line for that very special occasion?
Because we were in COVID, we were coming out of COVID, hadn't quite emerged from the tunnel yet, but there was in fact light in front of the tunnel. And I thought that was something which I should remind Singaporeans, because you could see the light there, and yet it was still necessary for the government to take some measures to keep things tight. And we could not relax our measures yet. And we needed to encourage people, hang on, the dawn is coming.
So what about now? What do you think are urgently needed at this specific timing?
There are new issues in the world post-COVID, and we are not able to take a holiday after COVID. We have to come back, and the term has started again. We work again.
So you don't have vacation time to look into some of the mathematical problems?
Well, I do take breaks from time to time, but the mind can't completely switch off.
Okay. Mr. Prime Minister, it was a great pleasure and honor talking to you, and we really appreciate for all the experiences, the insights, and also the stories that you shared with us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
it.
Thank you so much.
刚刚在这里的专访过程当中，李显龙总理与我们分享了双边关系、区域合作和全球发展中的核心议题。他表示，在全球格局深度调整的当下，各国要有适应变化的智慧；而对于友谊、合作、尊重和信任，则要有始终如一的决心。我们也期待中新两国的友谊能够像新加坡变植的榆树那样生机勃勃、枝繁叶茂。感谢您收看本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵，我们下期再会。